Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Chris Sixton with InfoWeather Catholic Media, and this is the rundown for Saturday, January 30th, 2021. This is going to be a long one. We got a lot to talk about, but only a few sections. Still, we've got a lot to talk about. So let's get right into it here. This week in Liturgy, we have today as the ferial day of the third week in Ordinary Time, the fourth Sunday, this upcoming Sunday, followed by the Presentation of the Lord on Tuesday, optional memorials of Blaise and Angsar on Wednesday, and then continuing on, we have the memorial of St. Agatha on Friday, St. Paul, Miki, and Companions on Saturday before the fifth Sunday next Sunday. Moving on to the weather, we have everything to talk about. Let's begin with winter weather. We have 2 rounds of winter weather expected to impact the United States over the next week. The first one will take place now until Wednesday, and that will last over kind of where that blue area is right now, but it's not associated with this map. It'll go down through the Great Lakes, including the Chicago region, which is expected to receive 9 inches or more of snow. Of course, affecting Columbus as well. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And then into the Northeast by Wednesday. By the time we also get to Wednesday, there's going to be another heavy snowfall event over California, which took place again last week this past week with that storm that's currently affecting Central Ohio and the Great Lakes region now. It's going to be very similar to that. Now, a little bit further to the north, it looks like, as it stands right now. It's going to head to the northern plains, likely the Great Lakes too, as we head into Thursday, Friday, and maybe even Saturday by then towards the northeastern part of the United States. As for severe weather, we have a few things to talk about. First off, there were 2 tornadoes, and those are our 2 things. There was an EF3 tornado in Fulton, Alabama on January 25th, earlier this past week. Winds to 150 miles an hour. There was 1 death reported and 30 plus injuries. The track was 9.5 miles long, 900 yards wide. Some of that damage you can see in the bottom left-hand corner. The radar reflectivity and velocities you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. Where the green and red is very strong on the right side of the bottom right image is where that tornado was located. Very unexpected, very isolated, definitely a very odd sort of thing. On January 27th, the same general system, it wasn't this cell, but the same system dropped a couple tornadoes, both EF1. The second one hit the Tallahassee airport, flipping over that plane as we see there. No injuries, no deaths, unlike the Fultondale tornado. 21-mile long track with that one. Let's move on to the tropics. We've got 4 areas to watch. 1 in the southern Indian Ocean and 3 in the southern Pacific Ocean. Those 3 in the southern Pacific Ocean, you see 94 has a medium chance of formation, 99 has a low chance of formation, and 96 has a high chance of formation. In the South Pacific, we also look up at the Climate Prediction Center map above, and you see that those 4 bubbles match the 4 bubbles up there, giving the Climate Prediction Center giving a high chance to the orange and red ones and a medium chance to the yellow low risk from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Also, more development is expected in week 2 from February 3rd to the 9th, as you can see there in the moderate risk near where 94 and 99 are right now near Australia. So we'll keep an eye on these storms. 98's actually inland over Australia right now, so we're going to have to wait for it to pop out to form. We're also keeping an eye, of course, on 96 and 94, which will also affect Australia, and 99 near many of the islands of Oceania. Let's move on to Columbus. Winter weather will take place throughout tonight and into Monday morning. We're looking at 3 to 5 inches with spots at 6 to 8. For more information, please consult the winter weather forecast, which was both issued yesterday and will be issued again this afternoon, potentially Sunday as well. That has snow day odds and more specific information on the timing and impacts associated with this system. The heaviest snow will occur Sunday morning. We're looking at a cold Tuesday nearing the single digits on Wednesday morning, probably around 10 degrees Wednesday. We're also looking at rain-snow mix Thursday into Friday, probably airing more towards the rain, but we'll see exactly what happens there. Stay tuned for updates on that. And we're going to be just below freezing for next weekend. In Norman, it's going to be warm and rainy today, Saturday. It's going to be around 50 and windy for Sunday. 50 and sunny on Monday. Say that 5 times fast, those last two forecasts there. It's going to be around 60 for the middle part of the week. And it's going to be back near 50 to close the week with rain on Thursday. And it's going to be below 40 for the rest of the weekend. Moving on to sports, we've got 2 things to talk about, Super Bowl 55 and the Baseball Hall of Fame. First off, I guess we put these in the opposite order. The Baseball Hall of Fame, no one is elected for the first year since 1960, so that's that. And as for Super Bowl 55, it's going to be Sunday the 7th at 6:30. The Chiefs have the line by just 3 points. Expect to be a hard-fought Super Bowl. Let's see what happens. And hopefully Tom Brady doesn't win another Super Bowl. Coronavirus video update 2021-5 is now underway. Generally moving down in terms of daily new cases throughout the United States, as you can see by both the trend line and the overall graph compared to last week. If you remember last week's video, really not anything significantly changing, but still general down swing in terms of the number of cases. If we look at the county map, generally also heading down for each state, so nothing, or each county, so nothing too wild there. Moving on to the daily deaths per capita, generally actually going up in many notable states, including Arizona and Alabama. Some of the other states it's staying relatively flat on, Ohio's pretty flat. Vermont is pretty low. So the deaths are kind of hit or miss depending on where you're at, of course, with time. Then the deaths by county, of course, also per capita per county. Also, nothing too crazy, I believe, of note as opposed to last week. In terms of hospitalizations, also, I believe, generally decreasing, potentially a few places where it's been increasing. But you do see, if you look at the trend line there, most of the people, most of the states are on their way down, which is, of course, very, very good. In terms of infections over time, we have a few new things to talk about here. First off, if you wear your mask, that green line there, it's going to help us out a ton. But we recognize that you probably aren't going to wear your mask. So the projection lies just south of rapid variant spread. That's that blue line. That blue line has not been in previous forecasts. That blue line was the vaccine rollout. Now it is variant spread. With the increase in the number of variants, especially in the United States, that's what, as they enter the United States, that's what we're watching. Worst case scenario is that red line, and you do see us having a second peak, or a third or fourth peak, depending on how you count at this point. But that would be the highest peak of all of them, because the highest peak was just there between December and January. That would be another big peak that we would really like to avoid. So get the vaccine when it's your turn. Mask up when you are around others, of course. So again, that's that. Not as promising as the past few forecasts, but that's kind of as expected. The forecasts from this kind of go back and forth. Moving on to the University of Oklahoma, generally moving up, of course, as students are now back on campus. 782 people have their first dose, and 133 additional have received their second dose. We're also looking at 112 students in isolation or quarantine as it stands right now. Also of note, I don't have a graphic for this, but the New York Times published an article earlier this week saying 158 million estimated total infections through late July. If we strengthen the COVID-19 restrictions, that will result in 19 million. That's over 10% less infections. If it's strengthened until February, that's not that much longer, 9 million fewer infections. If the restrictions are lifted in mid-March rather than in late July, that will result in 6 million additional infections. And if they're lifted in February instead of late July, that'll result in 29 million additional infections. So that is the power of the vaccines. And with that being said, let's move on to the overall vaccine for the United States. Nearly 50 million, over 15% of the U.S. population, has a vaccine that has been sent out to the states by the federal government. The first dose over nearing 28 million, nearing 10% of the U.S. population has received that first dose. And that second dose coming up on 2% of the population, nearly 5 million people receiving that. Again, Alaska and West Virginia lead the way there. We also see New Mexico and the Dakotas doing very well. Ohio really not doing too great. Neither is, of course, Alabama. We saw that high death rate there earlier in the video, and Idaho. So we're definitely going to want to keep an eye on all of those with time. But again, with time, this will all solve itself out too. In the U.S., we're nearing 27 million cases. Deaths also approaching that 500,000 mark. It's not quite there yet, but it is getting there. The U.S. current cases do, thankfully, remain below 10 million. We also saw a drop by nearly 6,000 cases in terms of active cases in Texas. The top 6 states remain the same. Well, really, the top 8 states remain the same. Kentucky moved from being unranked 2 weeks ago to being ranked 9th this week. It was 10th last week. It keeps on moving up. Missouri dropping down to 10th, also losing cases since last week, down to 306. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been approved, but its ethical rating is lower than the Pfizer or Moderna. If you have the option, get the Pfizer or Moderna. Instead, AstraZeneca is also making its way towards approval. If that's approved, it also has a low ethical rating like the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. But again, it's better just to get the vaccine than no vaccine at all, but it's also better to get the Pfizer or Moderna instead of the Johnson & Johnson or AstraZeneca. In terms of variant cases, we're up to 3 variants in the United States. The B117 from the UK, now at 315 in all of the states below, except for South Carolina. The South Carolina, the reason that they're highlighted in that map below is due to the B1315 from South Africa, which has 2 cases in South Carolina, and the P1 has 1 case in Minnesota, in addition to the 8 B117 in Minnesota right now. You do see, of course, Florida and California between 80 and 100 current variants. New York also above 20. Everywhere else less than 20. Those gray states, of course, with no variants as it stands right now. Worldwide cases have finally ellipsed the 100 million mark. Worldwide deaths still over 2 million. Of course, worldwide recoveries quickly approaching the 75 million mark, and worldwide current cases 26 million. The United States continues to lead the way, and no change in the top 10 countries this week. Moving on to the news, the only thing we have to talk about is the GameStop stock debacle. Say that 5 times fast. I probably said it wrong, but that's okay. You do see GameStop rather going high in terms of its prices. I believe it was up over above 400 at one point. It dropped down to 160 as you see that big dip there, and now it's back up at 325. Who knows? The whole point is some Redditors decided to buy the stock in AMC, for example, which was at $3 most of the year and most of the time, and now it's up over 13 and somewhere in there. It's just stupid. But certain companies, most notably Robinhood, halted trading of it, and now they've just reduced the amount of it that you can buy. There's lawsuits that exist against those companies like Robinhood for prohibiting sales, and there may be some by the SEC against traders for inflating the market, which I think is dumb because that's the traders' fault, like the people who determine the stock prices, not the people who bought the stock. Like if I wanted to go out and buy a whole bunch of GameStop, what's stopping me? And if that inflates the market, then that inflates the market. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, the Senate, House, and White House are all monitoring the situation. So that's that. Nothing else really of note there. We have a whole section on abortion news this week, which with the March for Life having taken place Friday and the Friday before that, the the 49th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. First up, Biden's abortion policy. He repealed the Mexico City policy on Thursday. The Mexico City policy is a policy that prohibits pro-abortion groups from being funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars internationally, which is supported by 77% of Americans. Joe Biden decided to repeal the policy, so now they can be funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars. 56% of people also don't support taxpayer abortion, even funded in the U.S. 53% of the people who responded to both those questions identified as pro-choice. If you only take the sample of pro-choice people, 60% don't support taxpayer-funded abortion internationally. And if it's only Democrats, 55% don't support taxpayer-funded abortion internationally. Now, although it is 53% pro-choice in terms of those interviewed in the poll, it was conducted by Marist, which is, of course, run by the Knights of Columbus, the Catholic organization. So take that what you will, but I would say it's a relatively fair poll if 53 identified as pro-choice. Joe Biden also withdrew from the Geneva Declaration, which consisted of the United States and 31 countries that declared that abortion is not an international human right, because it's not. Joe Biden apparently doesn't think that's a thing. That has caused, of course, a slew of problems in terms of the Catholic hierarchy in him, but not only him, also Nancy Pelosi. And we talked about this a lot last week, but there's been some more to go with it. So the statement back up on top, the first bullet point is a recap of last week. He said, in defense of what he said this week, he said, the denial of communion is for the sake of their soul, because you don't want to receive communion in a state of mortal sin. And his whole point also was, if us, the bishops, are going to deny communion to major politicians, and that actually be an impactful statement, the faithful must realize what communion is, and of course referring to that poll several years ago that talked about how many people don't believe in the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. He said, before COVID, I often questioned how many people just nonchalantly go up to receive communion when they're really not supposed to be, i.e. not in a state of grace, eligible to receive communion. Now, do remember that the Catechism of the Catholic Church says, although you have to go to Mass every Sunday, you only have to receive communion once a year, as well as go to confession once a year. I would recommend going to confession more often. That way you can receive communion more often. And, of course, going to Mass every Sunday, not applicable due to COVID. But those are big things that we need to take into account. So a higher respect for the Eucharist is his main point in that statement. We also had another Archbishop, the Archbishop of Denver, Archbishop Aquila, who condemned pro-choice Catholics Saturday, particularly politicians, saying, quote, "It is important to give witness to the dignity of the unborn, immigration, capital punishment, and other life issues," end quote. Quote, "The place dignity begins is with the unborn and the dying, at the beginning of life and at the end of life. If dignity does not exist at those 2 points, at the beginning and the end, it will not exist in between," end quote. So that's pretty self-explanatory there. The point is we need to help the unborn. We need to help those with assisted suicide, capital punishment. And if we get those two locked down to say that there's dignity at the very beginning of your life and the very end of your life, then necessarily there has to be dignity in the middle of your life as well. So that was his point there. Very well thought out. That was in a homily on Saturday, last Saturday. So in South Carolina, a heartbeat bill was being read for the third time on Thursday, which was a big deal in their Senate. It prevents abortion prior to heartbeat detection, which is considered 6 weeks, and except for cases of rape or incest. It also requires doctors to check for that heartbeat. If they do an abortion past that 6 week, past heartbeat detection, that results in 2 years of prison, felony offense, no crime for the woman doing that. They currently have a 30-16 advantage Republicans over Democrats in the Senate although one Republican said that she won't vote for it. And then they'll move to the House, probably pass there well. South Carolina is a red state. And the governor has said that he will sign the bill into law. On the national level, we have an abortion discrimination bill reintroduced Friday. Relatives of a person aborted on account of Down syndrome can take legal action. So let's say a mother goes in to get an abortion and she wants to abort her child solely for the purpose because he or she has Down syndrome. The family of that mother can then say, well, you killed somebody, I'm going to take legal action against you. And also in the article by CNA, they noted that only 7 countries have abortion past 20 weeks, including China, North Korea, and the United States. So it's a bad argument to say, do we want to be in company with those 2 countries? That's a fallacy. However, I mean, you don't want to be in company with those 2 countries. Let's move on to Catholic news. We got a couple things to talk about. We got heresy, and Seek 2021. So let's start off with the first heresy. The German archbishops decided to say, let's have Eucharist sharing between the Protestants and the Catholics. And the Congregation for Divine Faith was like, well, we can't do that because they don't believe in the Eucharist the way we do. This gets back to the problem we were talking about earlier in the United States with nobody believing in the real presence of Eucharist. And when I say nobody, I don't mean nobody. I mean a less than ideal group of people. But so there's many layers to this. The German church is out there in a bad way out there, like crazy out there. It would also significantly impact Catholic Orthodox relations if Rome approved of Catholic Protestant Eucharistic sharing or Eucharistic celebrations between the two, where basically we let people who don't really believe in the Eucharist the way we do into communion with us, for lack of a better term, because that's what it would be that they're doing. The Orthodox wouldn't take to that too kindly. And so the hopeful rejoining of the Catholic and Orthodox churches couldn't occur in that situation for obvious reasons. The Eucharistic theology is totally off. So that would just not be. Anyways, moving on to another situation. And there's really no explicit heresy here. There's just some people being people. So a teacher at one of the diocesan schools of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis and another teacher at a Jesuit high school within the diocese, but it's ran by the Jesuit province because it's a Jesuit school rather than the diocese. 2 of those teachers entered a same-sex marriage, which, of course, the Catholic Church is against. And we know from plenty of legal cases that the Catholic Church doesn't take too kindly to their teachers in same-sex marriage because they're supposed to be a role model for their students to uphold the Catholic faith, and not only in the classroom, but also outside of it, so that they know what is good, true, holy. In response, the Archbishop of Indianapolis told each school not to renew those teachers' contracts, which is reasonable considering that they broke a very important part of Catholic teaching. The diocesan school listened to their bishop and complied. The Jesuit school, thinking that the archbishop has no authority over them, which technically he doesn't, didn't comply and rehired that teacher. The archbishop then said that school is not Catholic, and what many people are calling the nuclear option is what Ed Condon from The Pillar called it, which it kind of is. So that was not really ideal. That wasn't the amicable way to solve the situation. And it wasn't a good idea to hire a teacher who doesn't uphold Catholic values either. So there's a wrong on both sides clearly. The Jesuit province then appealed to the Vatican Congregation for Catholic Education because, they want to be recognized as Catholic. And so Cardinal Tobin has been appointed to be the mediator of that conversation between the two. So that's a wild situation, let me tell you. With that being said, let's end on a happier note. Seek 2021 will take place Thursday through Sunday this week. Add 1 hour to get Eastern time, subtract 2 hours to get Pacific time. Exact times and how exactly your schedule goes will vary by focus campus, but it is what it is. Thursday night, we're going to have Sister Miriam James, Bishop Robert Barron as our opening keynotes. Entertainment later in the night, small group in between, opening mass beforehand, live if you can, of course, and so is the keynotes. All the keynotes will be live. For Friday, February 5th, St. Agatha, again, mass to start, very similar, the same exact format as Thursday night, because we have school Thursday and Friday, so they recognize that and say, well, during the evening is when these events will take place, Thursday and Friday. Later in the night, we got a personalized concert put on by Focus, so that will be cool to see live as well. Saturday, St. Paul Miki and Companions begin the morning with mass group orientation, which will last very shortly. Get to know your group, put on by your Focus Campus group, and then we'll have our morning keynote speakers, a little bit of small group, and then it'll go into impact sessions. You can listen to your speakers, Jason Everett, Father Mike Schmitz, all of the cool people. Father Mike will also talk in the evening keynote speakers along with Hillary Drafts, and then a prayer vigil to close out the night. Once again, we begin all things as we began the whole thing, and also ending it in a sense. I didn't update those times there. I apologize for that. I believe that is 11:30 a.m. that the closing keynote takes place. In fact, I know for a fact it's 11:30 a.m. that the closing keynote takes place. Small group Bible study at 10:30. Mass also to start the 5th Sunday of Ordinary Time. That's it for now. I've been Chris Sixton here with the Rundown. Stay safe, stay healthy. Don't forget to wear your mask. InfoWeather Catholic Media.